Lena had been chasing the kind of light that only shows up once a day, that soft golden hour glow that turns ordinary streets into something out of a dream. She pedaled hard, her old bike rattling under her as she raced against the sinking sun. She needed just one more shot, one perfect frame to finish her latest. Real path she usually took was blocked by construction cones, bright orange and stubborn, so she turned down. A narrow gravel road she'd never noticed before it wound through. Tall pines, their branches whispering overhead, and the air grew cooler. Cleaner, like she'd crossed into some hidden pocket of the world, didn't plan to go far, just far enough to catch the light. Spilling through the trees in long, dusty beams, but the road kept pulling her forward past overgrown fields, past a rusted mailbox. With no name on it, past a creek where dragonflies hovered like tiny jewels suspended in time thinned her tire. Hit a loose stone and she swerved too fast, the bike skidded sideways and she tumbled into a patch of wildflowers, not hurt, just startled, heart pounding, dirt on her palms, and her camera strap digging into her shoulder. When she looked up, she wasn't Alonia. Small town sat nestled in the valley below houses, with crooked chimneys and porches wrapped in ivy, laundry fluttering on lines like quiet flags. No cars, no streetlights, just the low hum of bees and the creak of a swing moving gently on its own hollow ridge. Whispered the name, though she didn't know how she knew either. Phone had no signal. The map app spun in circles, then gave up entirely. She tried to retrace her route, but every turn looked the same. The trees seemed to shift when she blinked, and the gravel road behind her vanished into thick brush. Walked her bike toward the nearest house, drawn by the smell of something warm and sweet baking. Maybe cinnamon, maybe bread. The porch was wide and weathered, painted a faded blue with peeling edges, and there, on the swing, sat a steaming mug like someone had just set it down. One was around. Lena hesitated, then stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned under her boots, but the sound felt welcoming, not warning. She glanced at the mug, curling steam, rising into the cool air. Before she could decide whether to knock or leave, a voice came from inside, calm, steady, like it had been waiting. "You're right on Timon." Older woman appeared in the doorway, gray hair pulled back in a loose knot, eyes sharp but kind. She wore a faded apron, dusted with flour, and held a wooden spoon like it was a wand. "He didn't mean to trespass," Lena said quickly. "I just took a wrong turn." Woman smiled faintly. "Everyone who ends up here took a wrong turn." Lena blinked, unsure if that was comfort or warning. "Come in," she said. "You'll want to see what's waiting." Lena glanced back at her bike, then at the empty street, then at the mug still steaming on the swing. Something about it felt familiar, like she'd smelled that scent before in a dream or a memory. She couldn't quite place. Followed the woman inside. House was filled with light even though the sun was nearly gone. Windows lined every wall, casting long rectangles across hardwood floors covered in woven rugs, books stacked on every surface. Not neatly arranged, but lived in pages, dog-eared spines cracked open mid-sentence. The kitchen table sat a tray of fresh cookies still warm, and beside them a photo album. Open to a page with a single Polaroid tucked in the corner, Lena frozeth. Picture showed a girl standing right where she'd fallen off her bike. Same wildflowers, same angle of light, even the same scuff on the left knee of her jeans butt. The girl in the photo was holding an old film camera, not the digital one slung over Lena's shoulder, and the date stamped in the corner read, 20 years Agathot's. "Not possible," she whispered. That woman poured tea into two mismatched mugs and handed one to her. "Time gets tangled here," the woman said. "It doesn't move in a straight line like you're used." Talina stared at the photo, then at her own hands, then back at the woman who watched her with quiet pachinchiho. "Are you?" she asked. "Ked?" "Call me Norand. This place Hollow Ridge," Nora said. "It's where things go when they're forgotten." But not gone. Elena wanted to laugh. It sounded like something from a storybook, but the warmth of the mug in her hands, the smell of the tea, the way the light caught, the dust motes in the air, all of it felt too real to be make-believe. "Am I Hera?" Nora didn't answer right away. She walked to the window and pointed to the attic stairs, barely visible behind a curtain of hanging Vince-Bacus. "Something upstairs has been waiting for you." Lena's stomach tightened. She wasn't sure she wanted to know what that meant, but the pull was there, deep in her chest, like a thread tied to her ribs, leading upwards. thought about turning back, getting on her bike and riding, until she found a road that made sense, but something in the way Nora looked at her told her it was already too late for that. You don't have to go up now, Nora said softly, but if you leave now, you might never find your way. Baklina looked at the Polaroid again, the girl's face so much like hers, but younger, unburdened. Smiling like she knew a secret, set her mug down. Nora nodded like she'd expected nothing lessened. Just like that, the ordinary day Lena had started with a simple mission to catch the light ended with her, standing at the bottom of attic. Stairs in a town that shouldn't exist, holding a question she didn't know how to ask, but knew she had to answer outside. The wind picked up rustling, the leaves in a rhythm that almost sounded like words, and, somewhere above her in the quiet dark of the attic, something waited in it, lost, just waiting to be remembered. The stairs creaked under every step like they were breathing. Lena kept one hand on the wall, rough wood catching on her sleeve as she climbed. The air grew warmer, heavier, thick, with the scent of old paper, and Sadarno stayed below, humming a tune that sounded both familiar and impossible to place at the top. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows across trunks. Stacked floor to ceiling, some leather, some tin, some wrapped in faded quilts, each marked with a small tag tied on with twine. Lena stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind her, not locked, just closed, like it knew she was meant to stay. Moved, slowly running her fingers over the nearest trunk. The tag read asterisk, for when you miss the sound of rain. On rooftops, another said, for the day you forget your mother's laugh. Asterisk, her breath caught, turned to the next one, heart thudding in her chest. This one had no words. Just a symbol, a spiral like a fingerprint or a wave frozen mid-curl lifted. The light inside lay a stack of letters tied with blue ribbon, the paper yellowed at the edges, but the ink still sharp, clear, as if written yesterday. Reached for them, then stopped. What if this wasn't hers to read, but the pull was too strong. Untied the ribbon and opened the first page. Dear you, it began. Asterisk, I don't know if you'll ever find this, but if you do, it means you're ready. Asterisk. The handwriting was smooth, looping, confident, and achingly familiar. It was her mother's, but her mother hadn't written anything in years, not since the fire, not since everything burned. Lena sank to the floor, clutching the letter to her chest, tears blurring the words before she could finish. The first line, how was this? How was any of this, Rilla? Soft knock came at the attic door. Nora stepped inside, holding a lantern. Now the bulb must have flickered out, though Lena hadn't noticed. You found it, Nora said, not a question. Lena looked up, eyes wet, voice unsteady. This is my mother's writing. I'd know it anywhere, but she never sent these. I never got them. Mara set the lantern down beside her. Some things don't travel through mail, she said. Some things travel through Temelina stared at the stack. Maybe 20 letters, maybe more. Would she write these because she knew you'd need them later, Nora said, even if she didn't know when. Or Helena opened another letter. Asterisk. I saw you today in the garden planting marigolds just like we used to. You were humming that off-key song we made up about the moon eating clouds. I wanted to call your name, but I knew you couldn't hear me yet. Asterisk. Lena gasped. Last spring after the funeral's been alonier, so she thought. Flipped through more pages, snippets of moments she thought no one had witnessed. Asterisk. You cried into your pillow the night you got the rejection letter, but you got up the next morning anyway. That's courage. Asterisk. Asterisk. You smiled at the barista, even though your hands were shaking. That counted. Asterisk. Asterisk. You kept going when you thought you couldn't. That's the bravest thing of all. Asterisk. Each line felt like a hand reaching through the dark to hold her. Sonara sat beside her on an old wooden chest. Never stopped watching you, Nora said. Just because you couldn't see her doesn't mean. She left. Lena wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Then why hide these hair bouquets? You weren't ready to carry them before. Nora said grief is heavy enough without carrying all the love that came with it. Too soon. Lena looked around the attic. Really look. Every trunk held someone's lost moment. Someone's quiet joy, someone's whispered hope. This place isn't about forgetting, Nora said. It's about safekeeping. Gla stood and walked to another trunk, drawn by something she couldn't. Nemithus one had her name on it, not written, embroidered and thread-worn, soft with time. Her knees went weak. Opened it, Slowly inside lay a child's drawing. Crayon on construction paper, a lopsided house, a sun with a smile, a stick figure holding hands. With two taller Anissa, the back in her own childhood scrawl, our family forever beneath it rested. A small music box tarnished but intact wound it gently. Thin melody floated out fragile but clear, the same tune her mother used to hum while washing. Diechislena sank to the floor again, this time not from shock but from relief, like a weight she'd carried for years finally had a place to rest. Nora handed her a cloth for the dust, she said, but Lena knew it was for the tear show. Long can I stay, hooray, as long as you need, Nora said. But remember, time moves differently here. 1 hour up here might be a minute outside, or a week. Lena nodded. Wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. She spent the next while reading every letter, tracing every word. Like Braille, feeling her mother's presence in the curves of each letter. In one she found a pressed violet, the same kind that grew by their old back porch. In another, a ticket stub from a movie they'd seen together the summer before. Everything changed, each item a thread stitching her back to a part of herself she thought she'd lost. Nora brought tea and a blanket and sat quietly in the corner, letting Lena grieve. Let her remember, let her breathe. When the lantern light began to dim, Lena looked up. What happens now? You choose, Nora said simply. Whose Bato? Take it all with you, or leave it here? Lena looked at the trunk, at the letters, at the drawing. I take it. Will it stay real? Nora smiled. Soft light was always real, but if you carry it back, you'll have to carry the weight tuned. If I leave it, 'twill walk lighter, but you might not remember why you came. Elena thought about her life outside Hollow Ridge, the empty apartment, the half-finished projects, the way she avoided mirrors, because she didn't recognize the person staring back. She thought about the girl in the Polaroid smiling like she knew a secret. Maybe the secret was this, that love doesn't disappear, it just waits until you're ready to find it again. She reached for the music box. You'll take this, just this? Nora nodded wise. Choice. Elena tucked the music box into her jacket pocket, its cool metal pressing against her ribs. Like a heartbeat closed, the trunk gently ran her fingers over the embroidered name. One last time. Then stewed read. Nora led her back down the stairs, the house quieter now, the light softer. At the door, Nora handed her the same mug from earlier, still warm. Drink it, she said. It'll help you remember what matters. Lena sipped the tea. Earthy, sweet, with a hint of something floral. What is thismery root, Nora? He said. Grows only hair. Lena finished the mug and set it on the porch swing. Her bike leaned against the railing just as she'd left it, but something felt different, the air clearer. Shoulders lighter. Turned to thank Nora, but the doorway was empty and Lee, the wind moving through the ivy, mounted her bike and pedaled slowly down the gravel road. This time the path didn't shift. This time she knew where she was going. In her pocket, the music box hummed faintly like a promise sent it. Everything lost is gone sometimes. It's just waiting for you to be ready to find it again. The road out of Hollow Ridge felt longer than the road in, but not heavier. Lena pedaled slowly, the music box warm against her chest, ticking softly with every turn of the wheels. She kept glancing back, expecting the town to vanish behind her like mist, but it stayed solid, quiet, steady, as if it had always been there, just waiting for the right person to stumble upon it. When she finally reached the main highway, the sun was high again, though she could have sworn only minutes had passed since. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Tone new message from an unknown number. Asterisk. Hugh left something behind. Asterisk. She stopped, her bike heart skipping, but she hadn't taken anything except the music box. Had she checked her pockets, her bag, even the basket? On her bike, nothing missing. Another message. Asterisk. Not everything fits in your hands. Asterisk. Lena stared at the screen, then tucked the phone away, unease curling in her stomach. Like smoke, she rode home through streets that suddenly felt too loud, too bright. Too sharp. Cars honked, people shouted, shop doors chimed with robotic cheer of everything. It seemed louder, harsher, less kind. Back in her apartment, she set the music box on the kitchen table and sat across from it like it might speak. It didn't. Wounded again, the melody was different, slower, sadder, like it was trying to tell her something. That night she dreamed of the Atiknot, the cozy warmth of before, but a version stretched, thin shadows pooling in corners where light used to be. In the dream she stood before the trunk with her name on it, bet the embroidery Fraying threads coming loose like roots pulling from soils reached for the lid, but it wouldn't. Openna voice whispered, not hers, not her mother's. You forgot to say goodbye, Lena. Woke, gasping morning light spilled through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor. The music box sat silent. Picked it up and turned it over. On the bottom, scratched into the metal, were 3 words she hadn't noticed. Before go back soon, her hands shook. Was this real, or had Hollow Ridge slipped into her mind like a fever dream? She opened her laptop, desperate for proofs. Hollow Ridge. Nothing, no town, no records, no photos, just white space where a place should be. Pulled out her camera, scrolled through yesterday's shots. There, it waste gravel road, the wildflowers. The porch swinged with the steaming mug, but when she zoomed in, the mug was empty and the house behind it had no windows, just smooth blank walls. Closed the laptop. Fast breathing hard, maybe she'd imagined it all, but the music box was still there, and so was the ache in her chest. That afternoon she walked to the edge of town where the paved road gave way to dirt. Stood at the spot where she'd first turned off. Kurseth gravel path was Ganin. Its place stood a chain-link fence with a sign * private property, no trespassing * beyond it. Thick trees blocked any view. Walked the fence line for nearly a mile until her boots were dusty and her throat dry. No break in the trees, no hidden gate, just silent seat. At an evening she sat on her fire escape, watching the city lights flicker on one night by one. She thought about the letters in the attic, about her mother's voice, and every linny about the way Nora had looked at her like she already knew every question Lena hadn't asked. Yet what if she never found her way backward? If Hollow Ridge only opened its doors? One seeth thought settled like stone. She couldn't live with that, not after feeling that kind of peace. Even for a moment. So she made a decision. She packed a small bag, water, snacks, her camera, extra batteries. The music box wrapped in a soft cloth. She left a note on her door. Gone for a while. Be back when I remember how to breathe. Then she got on her bike and rode toward the outskirts again. This time she didn't look for the gravel road. She closed her eyes and listened up. With her ears, with her bones, with the part of her that still hummed with the attic's quiet songs, turned down a side street she'd never taken before, past a shuttered bakery, past a laundromat with flickering neon. The air grew cool, earth city sounds faded, and there between 2 rusted telephone poles hung a single dried violet tied with twiner. Breath caught. Stepped off her bike and touched the flower. It crumbled slightly in her fingers, but the scent remained earthy, sweet, familiar. She looked ahead. The street ended in woods, but between the trees a narrow path glowed faintly like moonlight on water. She walked her bike forward. The moment her front wheel crossed the tree line, the world's shifted birdsong returned. Wind moved through leaves like whispered conversation, and in the distance smoke curled from a chimney. Hollow Ridge waiting. She didn't rush this time. Walked slowly, taking in every detail, the crooked fence posts, the wild mint growing along the ditch, the sound of a distant piano playing a tune she almost recognized. Same blue house stood at the end of the lane, porch swing, empty this time. But the door opened before she reached it. Nora stood there holding to mugs. No, you'd be back, Lena. Didn't ask how, just nodded and stepped inside. The house felt different, warmer, deeper, like it remembered. Her Nora led her straight to the attic stairs. No questions, no hesitation. You left too soon, she said. Didn't know you never dote. The top the trunks were rearranged. Her name trunk now sat in the center, bathed in soft golden light from a skylight. Lena hadn't noticed before you opened it, Nora said. Lena lifted the lid. Inside, the letters were Ganin. Their place lay a single envelope sealed with wax, stamped with that same spiral symbol. She broke the seal. Careful paper inside was blankened, till she held it closathon. Words appeared slowly like ink, rising from within the fibers. * To say goodbye, you must first say hello again. * Lena looked up. Confused. Nora pointed to the far corner of the attic. There, beneath a dust sheet, stood a shape she hadn't seen before. La pulled the sheet away. Old tarnished frame, carved with vines and birds. Better reflection was an Alan Estening just behind her shoulder. Was her mother, not as she was in the last days, tired and thin-bit as she was in the summers Lena loved best. Hair loose, sun on her face, eyes bright with laughter. Lena turned fast. No one there, but in the mirror she remained smiling. Lena reached out hand, trembling her fingers. Met cool glass, but the woman in the mirror reached back and for a heartbeat their palms Alagnettiers fell. Hot and fasty mom's reflection mouthed the words asterisk. Hello, my love asterisk, Lena. Sank to her knees, sobbing not from pain but from releasing the things she'd held inside. The guilt, the anger, the endless what-ifs poured out like floodwater. Nora placed a hand on her shoulders. This is why you came back, she said. Not to take something but to give something. Baklina looked up. What do I give your grief? Nora said. Let it go here where it can be held. Lena turned back to the mirror. Her mother's image began to fade, but not before mouthing three final words. I am proud thee. Mira went still. Just Lena, staring back at herself. But deferently Gurka, not inside her, had finally come undone. She stood slow, lithe. Envelope in her hand now held a single pressed Violetti, tucked it into her pocket beside the music box. Thank you, she said to Nora. Nora smiled. You did the Werno, go live like you mean it. Lena walked.
Ow.
Buck Becca she knew shed, carry holla. Bridge with her net and trunks, or letters bet in the quiet space between heart betchware. Love lives even after goodbye. Back in the city, everything felt louder, sharper somehow to bright. Lena walked her bike through streets that used to feel familiar but now seemed like a stage set built for someone. Elsesh past cafes where people laughed too loudly, shops with mannequins frozen in poses that looked more like warnings than invitations, buses that roared past without slowing. Gevin. The air tasted different. Stale, metallic, like it had forgotten how to breathe. Hish climbed the stairs to her apartment slowly. Each step heavier than the last. Music box sat on the kitchen table, exactly where she'd left it. Bet when she picked it up it was cold. No hum, no tick, no whisper of melodies wounded again a thing. The hollow click of gears turning an empty spacia. Chill ran down her spine. Had she lost it already? The connection, the peace, the quiet understanding that had settled in her chest. Like warm tea. Ganesh sat on the floor, leaning against the cabinet, staring at the blank wall across from her. Outside sirens wailed. Someone shouted down the street. A car alarm started, then stopped, then started again. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the scent of the attic cedar and old paper and something sweet like dried lavender. But the memory slipped. Like water through her fingers. Panic rose thin and sharp. What if it was all just a dream? What if Hollow Ridge never existed? If she'd imagined Nora, the letters, the mirror, her mother's voice. Her hands shook, pulled out her camera, desperate for proof. Scrolled to the photos from that first day. Wildflowers, the porch, the mug. But now the image flickereth. House blurred at the edges like it was dissolving. She blinked hard when she looked again. The photo was gone, replaced by a plain gray screeno. Error messages absent. Shay checked her phone messages. Unknown number asterisk. You left something behind asterisk asterisk. Not everything fits in your hands asterisk. Both go nettlated or never. There's didn't know. Opened her bagged pressed violet from the envelope, rumbled to dust between her fingers. Sonely the music box remained solid, real but silent. Night she barely slept a very time. As she closed her eyes, she saw the attic door closing, slowly shutting her out. Shay woke, often heart-racing sheets tangled around her legs. Morning she felt raw, scraped thin like wind had worn her down to bone. Jay made coffee, but forgot to drink it. Sat at the table watching steam rise. Then Fadithan, she noticed something gain the windowsill. Single dried violetnet, the one from her pockethus. One fresh enough to still hold it. Shapesh hadn't put it there. Lived Alanino. One had been in her apartment. Picked it up gently. It smelled like rain and earth and something faintly floral like the tea Nora had given here. Her breath caught Mabe. It wasn't Gonamabi. It was waiting for her to pay attention. Spent the day walking, not with purpose, just moving through parks, along riverbanks, past old brick buildings with fire escapes twisted like Vinish. Watched Peel Plea, a child chasing pigeons, an old man feeding squirrels, a couple sharing headphones, both smiling at the same unheard songs. Mal moment, squit connection. Sand for the first time in years. She didn't feel separate from them. She felt part of it, like she belonged in the world. A gainet, just passing through, but living in a thaw. Evening she sat on her fire escape. Again city lights blinked on one by one. Held the music box in her lap, still silent, but she didn't wind it. Just held it, letting its weight remind her you don't Need proof to know something matter o do. Don't need a photo to remember a feeling. You don't need to see it to believe it was real. Next morning, she cleaned her apartment frantically, not to erase anything, but gently like tending to a garden. Washed dishes, folded laundry, wiped dust from shelvesh, found an old shoebox in the back of her closet inside, or photos she hadn't looked at in Yorkshire and her mother at the beach building. Sandcastle sit in the kitchen covered in flour laughing. Over a lopsided cake heat, the park feeding ducks bread crusts, sat on the floor for hours, just looking, not crying, not a chingist remembering with. Kinness with love and not his wounds, but his gift she picked one photo, the one from the beach, and taped it to her wall, above her desk thin. She opened her laptop not to search for hollow ridge, but to write not for views or likes or algorithms, but for herself. For the girl who got lost, for the woman who found her way back, wrote about light and wrong turns, and porches with steaming mugs about, trunks full of unsent letters and mirrors that showed more than reflections, didn't name, the town didn't describe Nora's face, kept it soft. Vague like a dream you're not supposed to hold to title libus. Some truths aren't meant to be pinned down there, meant to be carried light like a secret between friends, like a violet tucked in a pocket like a melody. You hum when no one's listening. She typed the music box on her desk, gave a soft click knot. A full song, just a single note clear, and bright like a bell ringing, far away smiled. Didn't need to go back, 'cause she'd brought it. With her net and things, but in how she saw the world, know how she moved through I through. She let herself be seen. That week she rode her bike to the edge of the city, again at searching, just visiting show, stood where the pavement ended and the wild grass began offense. This Timonosig ingnost open space, and on the breeze came the faintest scent of cinnamon and old books closed. Her ice breathed, deepened, whispered, "Thank you," then turned her bike toward home, and not running, not hiding, just living with her heart open, ready for whatever came next. Beckos, she knew now some places aren't on maps. People appear only when you need them. Some goodbyes are really hellos in disguise, and some silence air, just the space between notes waiting for you to listen. Pedaled slowly, sun warm on her shoulders, music box, quiet but presentin' for the first time in a long times. Felt whole and not fixed, not healed but whole, like all the broken pieces had finally learned to sing together. Weeks passed like pages turning in a book. Lena stopped counting days and started noticing small things. Way morning light hit the fire escape railing, casting long thin shadows that looked like piano keys. Sound of rain on the roof, not as noise but as rhythm, steady, comforting like a lullaby she'd forgotten. Smell of bread baking from the bakery down the street, warm, yeasty, sweet enough to make her pause mid-stride, just to breathe it in. Still carried the music box everywhere. Not because it played, but because it reminded her that some things don't need to make sound to matter. Own afternoon while sorting through old film canisters, she found a roll she'd never developed, shot during that strange summer before everything changed. Took it to the only photo lab left in the city, the one with flickering neon and a bell that jingled when you opened. The door owner, an older man with ink stains on his fingers and glasses perched low on his nose, nodded without asking questions and promised to have it ready by tomorrow, and she returned the next day. He handed her a paper envelope sealed with a sticker that read, "Handle with care back home." She sat on the floor cross-legged and opened its slow lithe first few shots. Were blurry sun flares over rooftops, a cat sleeping on a windowsill, her own shadow stretching long across pavementen. Came the beacher mother, standing ankle-deep in waves, laughing hair loose, arms wide, like she was hugging the skyline as breath. Koch hadn't remembered taking that photo, but there it was, your old tangible proof that joy had existed, that they had been happy, that love had lived in their bones. Long before grief tried to bury, Itch taped the photo beside the others on her walnut. As a relic, but as a promise that the joy could return. Just because it left didn't mean it was gone. For that evening, she walked to the riverbank, where the city lights shimmered on dark water, sat on a bench worn smooth by years of strangers, and watched boats glide past, leaving trails of light like Kometsa. A woman sat beside her, holding a paper cup steaming in the cool air. "You look like you're carrying something heavy," the woman said, not on Kindle. Alina smiled faintly. "Used to be," she said now. "I'm just learning how to hold it, gent lithe." Woman nodded like she understood thee. Sat in silence for a while, watching the water before leaving. The woman placed a small dried violet on the bench. Between them stood and walked away without another word. Lena picked up the flower. It smelled like rain and memory, and something quiet she couldn't nimesh. Tucked it into her pocket beside the music box. Back home she opened laptop again. It to write this time, but to plan. She'd been saving money for years for a trip she never took, always waiting for the right moment. No. She knew the right moment wasn't a date on a calendar. It was a feeling in your chest. Quiet, yes. She booked a ticket to a coastal town she'd never visited but had of since childhood. No Rosano agenda, just salt air and open horizons. Night before she left, she packed lightly camera, extra film, sweater, journal, pens in the music box wrapped in a soft clothes. She zipped her bag. Her phone boots ate a notification from an old email account she rarely checked. Zobek line for when you're ready. Her hand still itch opened it. No sender name. Just a single sentence asterisk. Some roads lead away. You can find your way back to yourself asterisk, and below it a map not digital. Hand drawn, showing a winding path from the city to the coast, with a small blue house marked near the shore. Porch swing included. Stared at the screen. Thin closed itch. Didn't need directions. Already knew the Waith train ride took most of the day. Watched cities blur into towns, towns into fields, fields into forests. Didn't listen to music. Just let the rhythm of the rails fill her ears like a heartbeats to Durnhue. She stepped off at the coastal station. The air tasted differentiality. Sharp. Alavesh rented a bike from a shop with seashells glued to the doorframe and rode toward the edge of Townth Road. Narrowed past dunes, past driftwood sculptures, past houses painted in bright blues and yellows that looked like they'd been kissed by the Sunan. There at the end of a quiet Linnea small blue house. Pork swing, moving gently in the breeze. Steam rising from a mug on the seether. Breath caught. Bet she didn't rush. Leaned her bike against the fence and walked slowly up the path. Front door opened before she reached it. Nora stood there. Same flower-dusted apron, same calm. I knew you'd find your Welena. Didn't ask how. She just stepped inside. House smelled like sea salt and rosemary and old paper, familiar-like. Coming home to a place you never knew. You, me, Sidnira handed her a mug. Some tea. Same warmth. You stayed away long enough. Nora said. Lena sipped the tea. You needed to learn how to carry it. Nora noted. Don did. Yelena thought of the photos on her wall, the violet in her pocket, the quiet mornings, the way she now noticed birdsong instead of Trophius. Nora led her not to the attic this time, but to a small room at the back of the house. Windows on three sides, walls lined with shelves holding jars filled with sand, seashells, feathers, pressed flowers, each labeled not with names but with moments. Asterisk first sunrise after lost laugh that broke the silent step. Taken without fear. Asterisk in the center of the room sat a wooden table and on it a blank journal upon. To the first Pagalina ran her fingers over the paper smooth. Cool, inviting. This is yours, Nora Saito. Write what comes next, not what happened. It not what you lost, but what you're becoming. Glena sat, picked up the pen, resting beside the journal. It felt light in her hand, like it had been waiting. Wrote one sentence. Asterisk. I am here, then another, and that is enough. Asterisk outside. The ocean roared softly. Wind rattled the window pane of sand. The music box in her bag gave a single soft chiminot, a full song, just a note clear. True like a bell calling her home. Stayed in that room for hours net, writing much, just being, letting the quiet settle into her bones. She finally stood. The sun was setting, painting the walls. Goldnera waited on the porch ready to go back. She asked Galena. Looked at the house, the sea, the sky streaked pink and orangeno. She said. Najetnera smiled. Good, some stories aren't meant to injust to keep. Unfolding. Glena walked to the edge of the property where dunes met. Siish took off her shoes, let the cold water wash over her feet, watched the waves pull back, then return again and again, ever the same a ways. Faithful Shnu Nosh didn't need to chase the light, just needed to stand and eye twin it. Woodbeckosh, she was ready, not fix it not. Perfect just present a leave openth. Wind tugged at her hair, carried the scent of salt and wildflower sand. Far off a seagull creed not. Lonely just. Frisch turned back toward the house. Pork light glowing warm against the dusk music box, silent but sure. In her pocket hand for the first time in a long times. Knew exactly where she belonged. Not in the past, not in some far-off future, but right here right. Now breathing Fling Ling quiet moment at a time.